she didn't come tonight?
She was gonna follow behind.
think
She
she-
had some stuff to do with the boys. Not too long ago. She said they were just
So,
finishing up.
should I start soon or do you want to wait a little bit?
Probably we can start.
Okay. All right, so maybe we'll just start with a little care time and maybe folks will join in. Great. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine His Divine Grace, Srila Abhay Chiravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srila Bhagavatam Ki, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Book Ki, Gaur Premanandi. So, good evening, everybody on Zoom land, Facebook land, YouTube land, and wherever else this is broadcasting. So, you may hear some devotees in the background. Some friends came over and offered a hand with this class. So, thank you, everybody. Amen. Hare Krishna. So, for tonight's class, I thought we would read from the Krishna book, which is Prabhupada's summary study of the 10th canto. But before we do, let's offer a little Mangal Charna. Om Agyanatimandasya Gyananjana Salakacha Chakshu Unmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Gora Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gotrishe Namaha Vancha Kalpa Turubascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaurabhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Hare Krishna. So I'll begin reading from the 22nd chapter of the Krishna book, which is entitled The Stealing of the Garments of the Unmarried Gopi Girls. Krishna Vashtraharanam Lila. So I'm reading this particular section because the month after Kartik is the month in which this pastime takes place, which is called Kachani Vrat. And so the details of which will be revealed shortly. So I'll just read directly from the text and maybe speak a little bit in between the sections. If I won't read the whole chapter because it'll be too long. So according to Vedic civilization, unmarried girls from 10 to 14 years of age are supposed to worship either Lord Shiva or the goddess Durga to get a nice husband. But the unmarried girls of Vrindavan were already attracted by the beauty of Krishna. They were, however, engaged in the worship of the goddess Durga in the beginning of the Hemant season, which is just prior to the winter season. And the first month of Hemant is Agrahayana, which is October to November. And at that time, all the unmarried gopis of Vrindavan began to worship the goddess Durga with a vow. They first ate Havisha Anna, a kind of food prepared by boiling rice together, mung dal and rice, without any spices or turmeric. So imagine khichdi with no spices or anything like that. According to Vedic civilization, this type of food is recommended to purify the body before one enacts a ritualistic ceremony. All the unmarried gopis in Vrindavan used to daily worship the goddess Katyayani early in the morning after taking bath in the river Yamuna. Katyayani is another name for the goddess Durga. The goddess is worshipped by preparing a doll made from sand on the bank of the Yamuna. So it is recommended in the Vedic scriptures that a deity be made from different types of material elements. It may be painted, made of metal, made of jewels, made of earth, wood, or stone, or it can be conceived of within the heart of the worshipper. The Mayavadi philosopher takes all these forms of the deity to be imaginary. But actually, They're accepted in the Vedic scriptures to be identical with either the Supreme Lord or the respective demigod. So normally, of course, the Katyani Vrat is that they're praying for a husband. But here, the gopis are specifically asking the goddess Durga specifically to be married to Krishna. And so one may say, well, if they're pure devotees, why are they engaged in this karma kanda activity, this common karma activity which materialistically minded people would engage in? And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the form of the goddess of Durga that they're worshipping is not the external form of Krishna's energy, which is Mahamaya, which is normally worshipped for the purpose of some material benediction. Many people worship the goddess Durga for some material benediction. But Prabhupada would point out, as he points out later on, that actually because the gopis are engaged in this worship to establish a relationship with Krishna, this is actually an internal form, the internal energy of Krishna. This is Yoga Maya. So one should not think, and Prabhupada will speak on this a little bit later, but this is an important point to note, that this is not the mundane affair of a lusty person who wants, to have some material benediction. And it is described, Prabhupada said later on in this verse, that this should not be considered a material consideration because they are eternally, they are nitya siddha, they are eternally perfect personalities who are wanting to, who are so fixed on Krishna that this otherwise mundane ritual actually has a very sublime and spiritual quality to it. So I hope my audio is coming through okay. Yeah, okay. The unmarried gopis, I'm going to continue to read. The unmarried gopis used to prepare the deity of the goddess Durga and worship with chandan, pulp, garlands, incense, lamps, and all kinds of presentations, fruits, grain, twigs of plants. And after worshiping, it is the custom to pray for some benediction. The unmarried girls used to pray with great devotion to the goddess Katyayani, addressing her as follows, quote, O supreme external energy of the personality of Godhead, O supreme mystic power, O supreme controller of this material world, O goddess, please be kind to us and arrange for our marriage with the son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna. The Vaishnavas generally do not worship any demigods. Here Prabhupada's making this point. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has strictly forbidden all worship of the demigods for anyone who wants to advance in pure devotion service. Yet the gopis, who are beyond compare in their affection for Krishna, were seen to worship Durga. The worshippers of demigods sometimes mention that the gopis worshipped goddess Durga, but we must understand the purpose of the gopis. Generally, people worship goddess Durga for some material benediction. And here the gopis prayed to the goddess to become wives of Lord Krishna. The purport is that if Krishna is the center of activity, the devotee can adopt any means to achieve that goal. The gopis could easily adopt any means to satisfy or serve Krishna. And that is the super excellent characteristic of the gopis. They worship the goddess Durga completely for 1 month in order to have Krishna as their husband. And every day they prayed for Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, to become their husband. So in his commentary, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that Krishna, he's not seeing these gopis, like what they're performing is that of sadhana, bhakti. Like they have these yogis and they perform these great austerities and they perform great penance. But Krishna knew that they were actually pure-hearted devotees, and therefore he reciprocated very, very nicely. And they did this the whole month. And anyone who's been in Vrindavan or Govardhan this time of year knows that it can be very, very chilly. As opposed to, say, a month earlier when the days were very warm and the nights were also quite warm. The days warm up a little bit, but the night times get very, very cold, and the water in the waters of Yamuna get very, very cold. In the beginning of the month, it gets that way, and as the month progresses, it gets even more so. So one can imagine, well, the austerity of waking up early, going out into the cold air, bathing in the Yamuna, worship, and then worshiping the gods and eating only a bit of havisha anna, this very plain gruel type food stuff. So I'll continue to read. Early in the morning, the gopis used to go to the banks of the Yamuna to take a bath, and they would assemble together and holding one another's hands, loudly sing the wonderful pastimes of Krishna. So again, this is very wonderful to consider that not only were they engaged in this austerity for the purpose of attaining Krishna, but they knew that everyone else was there for the same goal. But there was no competition. All of them were supporting each other fully in their desire to attain Krishna as a husband. There was no like, hey, mine. There was no that possessiveness or enviousness within them. They all were fully cooperative with each other. And holding hands, they would loudly sing the wonderful pastimes of Krishna. That is kirtan. Of course, in the previous chapter, we read the Venu Gita, in which the gopis would praise Krishna and they steal his flute and so forth. So, so again, we see the gopis again engaging in this wonderful, natural, spontaneous kirtan, the glorification of Krishna, by loudly proclaiming his glories, by loudly proclaiming and describing his beautiful pastimes. It is an old system among Indian girls and women that they bathe in the river, they place their garments on the bank and dip into the water completely naked. The portion of the river where the girls and women bathe was strictly prohibited to any male, and this is still the system. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing the minds of the unmarried gopis, blessed them with their desired objective. They had prayed to Krishna to become their husband, and Krishna wanted to fulfill their desires. So at the end of the month, Krishna, along with his friends, appeared on the scene. Another name of Krishna is Yogeshwara, or the master of all mystic powers. By practicing meditation, the yogi can study the psychic movement of other men, and certainly Krishna could understand the desire of the gopis. Appearing on the scene, Krishna immediately collected all the garments of the gopis, climbed up into the nearby tree, and with a smiling face began to speak to them. So in his commentary, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also describes the name, because this is the name that's actually used in the Bhagavatam, in the section, that Yogeshwar. Another name for Yogeshwar means that all the gopis were very attractive and beautiful young women. Within the heart of Krishna, there was absolutely no material lust. The affection that Krishna had for the gopis and what the gopis had for Krishna is comprised of prem, which is Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma, which is specialized completely by the quality of pure spiritual energy. There is no mundane lust. There's no mundane desire. There's no effect of the three modes of material nature, either on Krishna or the gopis. Although it appeared to be, reading this, a person of a materialistic mentality would think that this is a romantic play between boys and girls. Boys, like girls at a certain age, like to tease each other because that's how they relate to each other romantically. But this is purely of a spiritual nature. And Krishna had absolutely no material lust in him whatsoever. And therefore, the name Yogeshwar also implies that too, that this pastime that's taking place is of a completely sublime spiritual nature. We cannot apply our experiences here in the material world as conditioned living entities. Upon this, we should know that this is the interplay, interexchange between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his eternally liberated souls. So Yogeshwar indicates that. And also, as Prabhupada says here, that he is Sarvagya, that he is all-knowing personality of Godhead. And as those who are yogis, one of their mystic siddhis that they can, as well as becoming very large, Mahima, becoming very light, Laghima, like that, they can actually control and understand and perceive the minds of others. Right? They develop psychic ability. And so Krishna, also being Yogeshwar, knew the hearts of the gopis, what their intentions were. And therefore he appeared in order to increase that desire to attain him. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also comments that in previous chapters in the Gopi Geet, Krishna was churning the hearts, the purvarag, of the married gopis. But now he is churning the hearts in purvarag, the mood of separation, of not yet uniting with Krishna, in the hearts of the unmarried gopis. And he wants to fulfill their heart's desires. So Krishna, he sees that they're bathing, and his friends that he's with is also described by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, that they're the younger gopals, the younger cowherd boys, who were so attached to Krishna that wherever Krishna went, they would just follow. They would just kind of follow behind him. So Krishna then gathers clothes, hangs them up in a tree, and climbs in a tree, and this is how he addresses them. He said, "My dear girls, please come here, one after another, and pray for your garments, and then take them away. I'm not joking with you. I'm just telling the truth. I have no desire to play any joke with you, for you are tired of observing the regular principles for 1 month by worshipping the goddess Katyayani. Please do not come here all at once. Come alone. I want to see each of you in your complete beauty, for you all have thin waists, and I've requested for you to come alone. Now please comply." And when the girls in the water heard such joking words from Krishna, they began to look at one another and smile. They were very joyous to hear such a request from Krishna, because they were already in love with him. Out of shyness, they looked at one another, but they could not come out of the water, because they were naked. Due to remaining in the water for a long time, they felt cold and were shivering. And yet, upon hearing the pleasing, joking words of Govinda, their minds were perturbed with great joy. And they told Krishna, "Dear son of Nanda Maharaj, please do not joke with us in this way. This is completely unjust to us. You are a very respectable boy, because you are the son of Nanda Maharaj, and you are very dear to us. But you should not play this joke on us, because now we are all shivering in the cold water. Kindly deliver our garments immediately, otherwise we shall suffer." And then they began to appeal to Krishna with great submission. "O dear Shyam Sundar," they said, "we are all your eternal servitors. Whatever you order us to do, we are obliged to perform without hesitation, because we consider it our religious duty. But if you insist on putting this proposal to us, which is impossible to perform, then we shall certainly have to go to Nanda Maharaj and lodge a complaint against you. And if Nanda Maharaj does not take action, then we shall tell King Kamsa about your misbehavior." So, Ayi Nanda Tanuja Kinkanam. Here you see much of Mahaprabhu's Shikshashtakam being reflected in these beautiful prayers. Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkam. Oh Krishna, I am your servant. So whatever you tell us to do, Ashisha Pada Adarshama, Marma Hotam Karota, no, that the gopis are praying like this. That Krishna, you can embrace us, crush us in your embrace, or leave us brokenhearted by not coming before us. Whatever you choose to do, we accept it, because you are our Lord, our Prananath, birth after birth. So here the gopis, in the one sense, they're admonishing Krishna, yet at the same time, they're also surrendering their hearts to him. They're admonishing Krishna, saying that you give us our clothes back, or we're going to tell your father. And if he doesn't do anything about it, then we'll go to Kamsa, because they know, well, Kamsa was after Krishna. So in this way, this is beautiful exchange with the gopis, that they're not completely giving in to Krishna. They still have that quality that they're reciprocating Krishna's playfulness. Right? Krishna is playing with them, they're teaching him back. So this is the reciprocal nature. So how does Krishna respond? Upon hearing this appeal by the unmarried gopis, Krishna answered, "My dear girls, if you think that you are my eternal servitors, and you're always ready to execute my order, then my request is that, with your smiling faces, you please come here alone, one after another, and take away your garments. If you do not come here, however, and if you lodge complaints with my father, I shall not care anyway, for I know my father is old and cannot take any action against me." When the gopis saw that Krishna was strong and determined, they had no alternative but to abide by his order. One after another they came out of the water, but because they were completely naked, they tried to cover their nakedness by placing their left hand over the pubic area. In that posture, they were all shivering. Their simple presentation was so pure that Lord Krishna immediately became pleased with them. And all the unmarried gopis who prayed to Katyayani to have Krishna as their husband were thus satisfied. A woman cannot be naked before any male except her husband. And the unmarried gopis desired Krishna as their husband, and he fulfilled their desire in this way. Being pleased with them, he took their garments on his shoulder and began to speak as follows. "My dear girls, you have committed a great offense by going naked into the river Yamuna. And because of this, the predominating deity of the Yamuna, Varunadev, has become very displeased with you. Please therefore touch your foreheads with the palms and bow down before the demigod Varuna in order to be excused from this offensive act." The gopis were all simple souls, and whatever Krishna said, they took to be true. In order to be freed from the wrath of Varunadev, as well as fulfill the desired end of their vows, and ultimately please their worshipable Lord Krishna, they immediately abided by his order. Thus they became the greatest lovers of Krishna and his most obedient servitors. Nothing can compare with the Krishna consciousness of the gopis. Actually, the gopis do not care for Varuna or any other demigod. They only wanted to satisfy Krishna. And Krishna became very ingratiated and satisfied by the simple dealings of the gopis. And he immediately delivered their respective garments, one after the other. Although Krishna cheated the young unmarried gopis and made them stand naked before him and enjoyed joking words with them, and although he treated them like dolls and stole their garments, still they were very pleased with him and never lodged complaints against him. The attitude of the gopis is described by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he says, "My dear Lord Krishna, you may embrace me or trample me under your feet. You may make me broken-hearted by never being present before me. Whatever you like, you can do, because you have complete freedom to act. But in spite of all your dealings, you are my Lord eternally, and I have no other worshipable object. This is the attitude of the gopis towards Krishna. And Lord Krishna was pleased with them. And since they all desired to have them as their husband, he told them, my dear well-behaved girls, I know your desire for me and why you worship the goddess Katyayani, and I completely approve of your action. Anyone whose full consciousness is always absorbed in me, even in lust, is elevated. As a fried seed cannot fructify, so any desire in connection with my loving service cannot produce any fruitive activity as an ordinary karma. So this is a really essential point that Krishna is raising. Again, they appear to be engaged in this karma kanda activity of worshiping goddess Durga for a particular goal, and every action has a reaction, right? Just as you take a seed and you plant it in the ground, eventually it fructifies. It takes root, it begins to grow, becomes mature, it produces flowers and leaves, then it provides fruits. And those fruits drop and plant more seeds, which then take root, which begin to sprout, which again produce more. So this is the nature of the cycle of birth and death, action and reaction. You may engage in different types of karmic activities in order to alleviate any suffering you may have in this world, any hankering you may have. Material piety is also considered to be material because it produces more fruit. And this is the cycle of birth and death, continues and continues and continues. But those activities which are engaged in pure devotional service to Krishna, it's like taking that seed and frying it in a pan. If you take that fried seed and plant it in the ground, it won't take root. It won't sprout up. It won't produce more fruit. That's the end. So the process of jnanakanda is meant to end the cycle of birth and death. But even that involves some fruitive activity. Because one cannot stay in a state of impersonal realization. But any activity done for Krishna is described as akarma. There's karma, which is pious activity. Krishna describes this in Bhagavad Gita. There's vikarma, which is those activities where against the Vedic injunctions and are considered sinful. And there's akarma. So those activities which are done for Krishna's pleasure are called akarma. It doesn't mean inactivity or inert. You just sit there and just stare at a wall and think, happy thoughts. But it means that those activities that we do for Krishna do not produce a karmic reaction. It does not bind us. We're not bound by that work. It doesn't bind our consciousness. It doesn't degrade the consciousness in the Marsam cycle of birth and death. But because it's connected with Krishna, it elevates us. It frees us from not only the reaction, but the desires to commit sinful activities, the desires for karmic activities. Because it cultivates the desire to attain Krishna. So these gopis who are engaged in this activity, we may again, as I said at the beginning, think that this is some type of romantic affair between boys and girls. But this is actually the loving exchange of pure devotees of Krishna with the personality of Godhead. Krishna is going along with this activity to increase their desire. And their goal is only to attain Krishna. Not for any type of material benediction, not for any type of elevation to the heavenly planets, not even for impersonal liberation, but for the pleasure of Krishna, to love Krishna more, and to have Krishna as their husband, meaning to have established the eternal sambandha relationship with Krishna. So Krishna, he is never bound by any Vedic injunction, nor by any karma kanda activity, but he is bound by the love of his devotees. That he's bound by. Like we were reading last month, during the month of Damodar, Krishna, Dambandha Mila, Krishna being bound by his mother. And he's Bhakti Bhattam. It's described in a Damodar Ashtakam that he's Bhakti Bhattam. He's bound by his devotees' love, not by karma kanda activities, not by religious rituals, not by knowledge. Someone can know so much about the Veda, but that doesn't bind Krishna's heart. One can even have realization of Krishna in his mood of Ashwarya. Krishna says, I'm never controlled by that love. Only by the simple-hearted love of those devotees who have this Madhurya Prem, loving simple-heartedness. So Krishna was controlled by his love for the gopis, so therefore, how can he not reciprocate with them? Every day they're going to the river and bathing in cold water and worshiping the goddess Durga, eating very plain food, performing these great austerities simply to attain Krishna. So how could Krishna ignore such a request? And I'll continue to read. I think we're getting close to the end of the pastime. There is a statement in the Brahma Samhita, Karmani nirdahatu kintucha bhakti bhajam, that everyone is bound by fruitive activities. But the devotees, because they work completely for the satisfaction of the Lord, suffer no reactions. And similarly, the gopis' attitude towards Krishna, although seemingly lusty, should not be considered to be like the lusty desires of ordinary women. The reason explained by Krishna himself. Activities in devotional service to Krishna are transcendental to any fruitive result. My dear gopis, Krishna continued, your desire to have me as your husband will be fulfilled, because it is with this desire that you worship the goddess Katyayani. I promise you that during the next autumn season, you shall be able to meet with me, and you shall enjoy me as your husband. So this ends this particular pastime, but the chapter continues a little bit. But then we see, of course, the autumnal Rasa Lila is what is being referred to here, and that is explained in later chapters. But there's more pastimes to take place until then, because this is the very end of the fall, and it's one more whole year before the result of this vrat, this Katyayani vrat, takes fruition. So Krishna will lift the Govardhan hill. So many pastimes will take place. Krishna has already defeated the Kaliya serpent, and where the gopis had got a chance to see him dance. And they were amazed and also mortified because everybody's fainting, they can't believe Krishna's doing this, but also the gopis are appreciating what an expert dancer Krishna is, because he's dancing on the head of Kaliya. And later on, Krishna will also reveal the lifting of the Govardhan hill. And there also he has some beautiful exchanges with the gopis too. So these gopis will also have their desires fulfilled in the next following fall during the Sardiya, the autumnal Rasa Lila dance. So we're about 5 minutes until the end of the class today. Does anybody online have any questions? I can continue to read. There's more to this chapter, but anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. All right, so I'll just continue to read because.
No question?
No? Okay. Just want to check in with the peanut gallery here. Okay, I'll continue to read that because there's more, but it takes an interesting turn in this chapter because here we have this very beautiful, intimate pastime with the topmost of Krishna's devotees. But here we're going to read something it's going to shift in a very interesting way, and I'll speak to that. I'll read a little bit. And we have about 4 minutes left, so I'll not delay it. Later, Krishna, in the company of his cowherd boyfriends, took shelter of some trees and became very happy. And he addressed the inhabitants of Vrindavan. My dear Stoka Krishna, my dear Varutapi, my dear Bhadrasena, my dear Sudam, my dear Subal, my dear Arjun, my dear Vishal, my dear Rishabh. Just look at these most fortunate trees of Vrindavan. They have dedicated their lives to the welfare of others. Individually, They are tolerating all kinds of natural disturbances, such as hurricanes, torrents of rain, scorching heat, and piercing cold. But they are very careful to relieve our fatigue and give us shelter. My dear friends, I think they are glorified in this birth as trees. They are so careful to give shelter to others that they are like noble, highly elevated, charitable men, who never deny charity to one who approaches them. Nor is one denied shelter by these trees. They supply all kinds of facilities to human society, such as leaves, flowers, fruit, shade, roots, bark, flavor extracts, and fuel. They are the perfect example of a noble life. They are like a noble person who has sacrificed everything possible, his mind, body, activities, intelligence, and words, for the welfare of all living entities. So here Krishna is glorifying the gopis, but now he's glorifying the trees. Gopis are Madhurya Ras, the highest ras of Krishna, and the trees are in Shanta Ras. But even the trees are providing so much facility for Krishna and the Kaviraj that he is reciprocating, and he sees and appreciates the service of even the trees. So we can see how Krishna, all across the spectrum in Braj Lila, all across the spectrum of the realm of devotion, that anyone who renders any service to Krishna in any capacity, regardless of whether they're the most elevated Brahmin who can quote Shastra and speak and inspire thousands of people, or whether they're just a simple tree who's producing fruit which is being offered to Krishna, whose leaves are taken and making nice decorations, who offers shade to those devotees who are traveling, who never complains. Rains may come, winds may come, hail, the sun may beat down on it, but never complains. Trinad api sunichena, tayor api sahishna, amanina mana dena kirtaniya sadahari. Again, it's a Shikshastakam, that one should be more humble like a blade of grass. And we see how humble the gopis were in this lila. How Krishna, they were completely surrendered themselves to Krishna. But these trees that Krishna is also appreciating are also completely surrendered. And they're most tolerant. We talk about tolerant of a tree. Krishna is recognizing that quality, that they may be cut down, but they never complain. So the devotees who are reading this chapter appreciate, oftentimes devotees will read the first part because, it's more, they think it more interesting. But actually this section is just as profound because we see the qualities that devotees also aspire to attain, to be tayor api sahishna, to be more tolerant than a tree. Amanina, not wanting to have any respect for oneself, and manadena, to offer respect to others. If one has these qualities that we see in these trees, as well as the gopis, one can chant the holy name eternally, continuously, without stop, any type of hindrance. Because it means if one has this consciousness, we can chant purely, and chanting purely we taste the nectar of the holy name. So it's 8 o'clock now, 6 o'clock now. My time is up, right on the money. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful class. Thank you so much. Hari Bol.
The conch shell has blown. Class has ended. Hari Bol. Thank you very much.